Good afternoon, security risk managers, investigators and government investigators, corporate investigators. It's my very great pleasure this week to welcome along Dr. Warren Doudle, who has just written 3 books in relation to corporate compliance and security risk management. Welcome along to the program, Warren.
Thanks for having me.
Absolute pleasure. I've been looking forward to this for quite a long time, and I've got some real hard-hitting questions for you, mate, if you don't mind.
No, absolutely. Fire away.
Okay, so before we get into the books, can you tell us a little bit about your background and your history?
Okay, great. That's a question I can answer. My name, as you said, is Warren Doudle. I'm currently running a company called SecRisk. My background is, from the Army. I was an infantry soldier, paratrooper, coming through the ranks to captain. And then I went to Iraq in end of 2004, start of 2005 to work on the election, the first free election in Iraq, and as a manager. So I was quite fortunate. My old Army bosses were running the contract and the project. So I got brought across in a fairly senior role. And that was a massive learning experience straight out of the military. So baptism by fire. I worked in Iraq for the next 5 years. And while I was in Iraq, I actually went to you guys and did a diploma because it was discussed, a diploma of security risk management, because it was explained to me that when Iraq finished and the adventure was over, everyone would come back to Australia, and some people would go from being, cruising around Iraq, getting well paid, well looked after as high-level security people, and they would come back to work for Chubb or whoever you would, as normal security guys. And the guys that put in the effort to, develop their skills and experience would actually become managers and be going into industry, and everyone else would be going back to the Army or going back to normal jobs. So I was fortunate. You guys put on a really good course, and I learnt a lot. And from there, I went into the degree program at ECU over in Perth and did a Bachelor of Science in Security, which was really good. I learned a lot, and especially the technical side of the business. From there, I went across to ExxonMobil up in PNG, and I spent the next sort of 6-7 years up in PNG. During that time, I did an MBA, did a few more courses with you guys, work health and safety, workplace inspections. Once I got into that learning sort of cycle, I just couldn't stop. I needed to learn as much as I could. And every time something would come across my desk, I would understand that I still don't know anything that I need to know. I need to know more to be able to do my job. So, after that, I went back from PNG. I come back to Australia, and a good friend of mine, Travis, we started up a security company called SecRisk. And at the start of that, him and I were sitting around talking, and he was finishing off his master's from overseas, and I started my PhD. Next 3 years, did my PhD while I worked, as a consultant / running SecRisk, and got some really good clients, really good experience, especially in the PNG space. And on the back end of that, I started doing work for government in PNG and some other good clients. And that pretty much brought me up to, where I am now, which is moving backwards and forwards to PNG, sit on a couple of boards for companies and help out where I can.
Fantastic. That's great. Just to confirm or dispel the rumour, as a captain, whenever you picked up a map, did everyone get scared and run away from you?
They did, until they found out that I didn't walk out of the military academy. So in the officers' mess, no one would want to have a cup of coffee with you because you're an OR that sort of made their was like almost like I snuck in the back door. But
yes.
But it's I have that joke all the time, and I think the only story that I'll share on here is not long after I got promoted to captain, I was standing in the breezeway, and a couple of officers walked past and were talking about something to do with navigation and their soldiers and performance and all the rest of it. And I was standing with a couple of, sergeants and warrant officers that I'd gone up through the ranks with. And I made some smart comment. And then all these soldiers that didn't know me turned around and looked at me, and I went, that's right, I forgot I'm an officer now. I better behave like it. So yeah, It was a learning curve, but it was good.
It was. Yeah, good on you, mate. That's great.
I think I regret getting promoted, but that's all right. I enjoyed my time as a soldier much better.
Good on you. My word. I'll tell you what, leadership is one of your strongest qualities, Warren. I've learnt that over the years and I've seen it in action. Travis has told me it all comes back and it's just great to see. So what inspired you to write 3, not 1, but 3 books in relation to corporate governance and security risk management?
Well, it's a lot of people have gone, right, you've just written 3 books, but it's, it's not as, I actually started one book, the Workforce Nationalisation book is actually from my PhD research. So technically I've been writing that 5 years, 6 years. And I got it to a fairly reasonable manuscript about 2 years ago and then went, oh, no one's interested in this. If anyone wants to read it, they can read my PhD thesis, which is about 3 inches thick and A4 size. So, and then I thought about it a bit later. And I thought, well, I kept developing the draft and putting it to one side. I'd be flying around on a plane, write some more, put it to one side. And then I just sort of parked it. And then I did the same with the security book. Now, the security book I sort of worked on off and on for a couple of years. And then I kept parking it all the time. And I had an up-and-coming security professional join me and join my organisation at the start of the year, or February, March. And they were asking 1,000 questions. They were always interested in everything. And I was sharing my notes with them to sort of, these are some of the ideas I've had over the years. And they went through and looked at them all and read it as like a sort of they were doing a couple of assignments that sort of matched what I was doing. And they just read them for sort of some general information and come back and went, you should write a book, this, tidy it up, finish it off, and this should be a book. It's actually a solid manuscript for one now. So they helped me. So their name is Sammy, and you'll see on LinkedIn, Sammy works for SecRisk with me. But so from that, I sat down and went through them all and finalized both the security book and the Workforce Nationalisation book. I finished them off over sort of 6 months and pretty much got them to where they're ready to be published. And then from there, I went to get an auditing book to give Sammy and a few of the other people helping me on a task. But all the auditing books were either quality auditing or the financial side. And there was no auditing book that was just hey, these are the concepts, these are the principles. If you stick to the principles, it doesn't matter what type of management system it is, it'll be fairly close. So you can be part of an audit team. You're not going to be the subject matter expert in 50 different types of audit, but you'll be able to, participate and be an active member of the team. And for a lot of it, especially in smaller companies, medium-sized companies, the security manager, for example, will be able to undertake the audits and be part of the process. And if you're getting audited, you'll understand the system and how it works and what to prepare for. So after going through all these different books, one of them on information systems audit was 2.5 inches, 3 inches thick, and you couldn't actually get to the basics without reading, for 5 days. So as with all my books and all my information and how I interact with my staff and my people and all my peers, it is checklists. I'm not a smart man. I just work hard. So it's and having a checklist, having something you can reach out to. And as security managers, especially, we hop from, doing a due diligence investigation to a fraud investigation. And then suddenly we're doing a business continuity management plan. Now we're running an exercise. So we go from one thing to the other. We're developing our staff. We're running training programs. So, there's not many people around that can have that in their head. So each of my books is basically designed around, have a read, have a flick through, understand where everything is, and then put that book aside. And for a security manager, especially, the day of the race, you get told, we're going to have a meeting about a business continuity management plan, or we're going to have a meeting about, this. There's an insider threat that we need to address. All these different things, especially the young upcoming security managers that may have done their university course or the diploma, can reach for a resource, quickly flick it open and go, right, here's a chapter, half a chapter that'll get me through today and tomorrow. And at the back, there's the more detailed resources. If you want to really understand this, here's the course to do. Here's the book to read. And there's some fantastic subject matter experts in these different fields. But most of them are subject matter experts in a field, not across the whole sort of broad range. So, and that's what I was trying to get to, is just, this is, no one expects a security manager, even a senior one or an old and grey one like myself, to walk into a meeting and know everything off the top of their head. But and there's lots of young up and coming security managers and professionals that I mentor and do work with, that I have a cup of coffee with once a month and guide and support. And I always tell them, no one expects you to be an expert in everything, but have the humility to go, you know what, I'm going to get back to you on this, or have a book like mine or similar. There's actually some better books than mine out there, but they're a lot thicker and a lot more complex and a lot more expensive. Mine are basically resources for young up and coming security managers or people leaving defence or the police. So
I think you've achieved that in spades, and I can only second what you've mentioned there, because what you've done in here, you've got the index which tells you the subject. If that's what you need to know, you flip straight to page 36, and there it is without the fluff. And it's the hard-hitting stuff that someone has to focus on in relation to risk management prevention, emergency response, investigations, or investigation of fraud as against investigation of safety. And so, as you just said and described there, that's exactly the way it comes up in Dr. Warren's book. Now, you can go and buy the Australian Security Risk Management Standard, the current one, and pay $228 for it and get 175 pages of waffle with a whole lot of missing blank pages, right? And it looks like it's written in half Cantonese and half Chinese and something else. This cuts through the fluff, doesn't have any of that, and is the reference book for it. I'm so impressed with it, I am replacing the standard, the Australian standard, as the textbook for our security risk management students to Warren's book. So that's how impressed I am with the book. Now, I, like Warren, read a lot of these things, and I'm always looking for answers and looking for other solutions and steps and methods that can be implemented and followed. And sometimes the people who have to do that perimeter check or that daily walkthrough just to check the lighting, which some little old lady's safety depends on because she's got a mobility device at the shopping centre, right? And this is what it's all about, is practical application. They can read this and follow the steps. So it's a guide, it's a map for what to do in multiple situations. Now, we're never going to cover them all, but if you're faced with something new, you can look at this one, for example, and how would that apply there? So this is it's just solution packed, Warren. That's what's impressed me. Really pleased to see it. Now, could you give us, for example, a illustration of each of the books as something that's worked when it was practically applied, just from your experience? Doesn't have to be Ben-Hur scale, just something that you noticed actually worked.
All right. Well, as we discussed, the books are aimed at new up-and-coming managers, people coming out of police or defence that might be experts in their particular field, but now they're suddenly faced with being semi-experts in 10 fields, 15 fields, work health and safety, HR, ethical decision-making, all these things now because we're held accountable, whereas once upon a time, security managers were classed as like the gatekeepers, as opposed to being part of the management process. So I'll start with the security book because that's probably the most pertinent to what we're talking about today. The main theme in my security book is not so much, that's the one, I have to look without my glasses on. Not so much all security books have all the information that you need to get through. It's just how you find it and I just tried to lay it out in a very succinct, chapter-driven sort of. So you could open it up to the exact chapter. You could not touch the book, open it up the day of the race. And I'll give you one example that's not so much about the book, but about when I first went to work for Exxon. I went into a meeting and they started talking in oil and gas / engineer language, and I was completely lost. So I walked away from there, wrote down everything and Googled it. And then that's how I ended up doing my MBA, but just by being caught out and not understanding what they're talking about. So the idea of the security book, or all of the books, but the security book in particular, is if a new security manager is suddenly faced with a business continuity plan or something similar that they've not encountered, could be an expert, an investigator from the police, senior leader, senior sergeant, etc., or an SF guy out of the army who's an expert in his field, is suddenly trying to do a Mickey Mouse investigation into stolen food out of the fridge, or a more complex HR investigation, work health and safety, any of that sort of stuff. They can flick it open and go straight to the exact location in the book and can get by. But the main thrust behind the security book is helping people understand, well, my way of thinking in the security industry is, once you go into the corporate world, you need to understand that security is part of the bigger process. It's a business enabler, and you're helping that organization. It doesn't matter what organization you go into, you're now part of the management team, the senior management team. So you're not just the gatekeeper stopping people getting in to steal something. You're actually making sure they make money, they're profitable, they're safe, both reputationally, physically, across the whole. It's the whole not walking past something that's not right. As a security manager, you're like the moral and ethical guidance of the organization. You're the role model for everyone else to set their watch by. And that's what I try and put across is, aiming at becoming that person in the company that they need at every meeting to help them guide and support the company. And you're helping them make money and getting ahead, as opposed to just making sure the locks are sound. So that's what the security book is sort of about. And that's the main example I'd give of that, is trying to change the mindset of security managers, especially out of police and military, to be part of the business process, understand the finance, understand work health and safety, understand HR, understand all these different facets of the business, and then at every stage try and help the business succeed.
That's a really good example. I have a background in mining, and I've got lots of fantastic qualifications, but my shot firing one is what I'm most proud of. So I like blowing things up. I really enjoy that. I'm sure, Warren, you used to too. It's something that you just love doing.
Shooting things. Blowing things up is my favourite always. And machine guns.
Yeah, I haven't been there. But one day down the mine I was associated with, we had a new person come in, and they set 125 charges down in this underground mine to go off. And this was part of expanding the mine and getting to the ore vein and bringing out ore and not dirt. This is what they got to do. That's what they're paid to do. And that's what the manager was paid to do. And 99 of these 125 went off. The other 26 didn't. So that meant we had to go down into that mine with 26 nervous pieces of explosive charge. Yeah, and sort that out. Now, you can't imagine that that's ever going to happen. But it won't be specifically referred to in this book, but there'll be other areas you can go to here and think that through before you start calling for volunteers to go down there and fix the problem. That's what it's about. And it's, there are enormous examples out there that are minor, medium, and catastrophic that can just be followed and avoided by that one book. You got an example from one of the other ones, mate?
Absolutely. I've got the. I'll cover the audit book quickly. Auditing is its own profession, but everyone's exposed to it. So I think I wrote the audit book to just. It was to help my staff understand that it's not a dark, scary art. It's not a secret society or anything like that. It's a system and a process that you learn and understand. And once you understand it and you learn it, it's not that complex that you can't apply it to other things. And if you're actually the organization being audited, understanding the process and having the steps in place and making sure you're covered saves you a lot of time, effort, and money. So I was exposed to auditing very early in the piece, like both in defence and when I first went to PNG to work for oil and gas companies, and they were brutal with the audits. Everyone would run for cover. And because I didn't know any better, I was the only one that was sort of happily going, all right, who's the auditor? Yep. What do you want to know? And working through the process, because I found instead of being scared of it, it's embrace it. And especially the internal audits, you use it as an opportunity to square yourself away and make sure when the real one comes, you are covered and everything is done properly. So, and that's what I was trying to get across in the book is, follow the process. And it doesn't matter if you go from a management system to something different. The process and the principles are the same, transparent, and it gives you the opportunity to get yourself prepared before the auditor comes, both internal and external auditor. But it's a process, and it's a process that can be learned and followed, and it's nothing to be scared of. And if you embrace it early and understand it, you might not be exposed to it for a year or 2 years after you start work, but when the day comes, you can pull out the book, have a quick look, and be prepared for the auditor. Or if you're going to actually become an auditor yourself, because most auditors actually do, especially in the oil and gas industry, for example, senior managers are asked to go and audit their different affiliates of different companies. They do each other pretty much as the internal audit. So that's the direction I was headed with the book, was just to give some examples of how things are done and prepare people for if they have to be involved in an audit. It's nothing to be scared about. And yeah, just follow the if in doubt and the world turns to custard, open it up and follow the checklist and you cannot go wrong.
And you constantly refer to having a QMS, which is quality management system. Now, there is nothing tricky or scary about that. If you implement that and you actually monitor it, apply it, and don't leave it on the shelf to collect dust, everybody benefits. So
absolutely.
The clients benefit, the employees benefit, the managers have less fires to put out because the processes in the QMS are followed. And Warren specifically goes into simplified explaining of ISO in this book in relation to all that. And it doesn't sound like it was written by an accountant or a rocket scientist.
That's what I was trying to get away from.
Yeah, it sounds like it's written so someone can pick it up and follow it and implement it. Credit to you, Warren. It's absolutely amazing, that one. Have you got an example from the other one?
Yes, this is actually in theory, this is supposed to be my area of expertise. So, or at the moment anyway. But the thing I wanted to get, apart from simplifying my PhD, because it doesn't matter who you are. You read a PhD thesis, you go to sleep. I tell everyone, read the executive summary. Don't read anything further unless there's something specific you want to know, because it'll just put you to sleep. And the book itself is only 1/10 of the length of the thesis, but it has probably more information you can actually use, and it's got more practical applications. And I was trying to take that and create something easy to follow. That in PNG, for example, we have lots of, especially with the new project, the Total project coming online, and some of the new mining companies. A lot of the gold projects and stuff are kicking off again. So I wanted a very easy to follow, thought provoker, jogger, whatever you like to call it. So someone can be handed it, have a quick flick through, and in 5 to 10 minutes get enough general information to be able to make a sound decision, or at least consider it when they are working through something. But the Prime Minister of PNG the other day, when I caught up with him and gave him a copy of the book, I wanted to make sure he had one of the first copies, because he was one of the people that sort of inspired me to put it on paper and actually write it, as well as a few other people. But the new Labor Minister and some other people have got copies now and are reading it and are interested in some of the concepts. It's not rocket science, like you say. It's all the stuff we've always talked about and know and understand, but companies would not follow through until someone did the research and could statistically prove. And that's what I was sort of aiming at, was instead of just saying, hey, do the right thing, employ all the local staff and look after the local community, buy local, all those things we've talked about for years. They, instead of just being a do the right thing, it's a, hey, statistically, I've gone through the numbers. I've gone through it over 3 or 4 years. I've interviewed people. I've done all these different things. And here is the actual information, which is, if you put the money and time and effort into developing the local workforce, the local businesses, the local engineering opportunities, all these different things right at the start of the project, then by the time you get midway through the project and you go into production, you're actually way ahead financially, reputational benefits, having people fly in, fly out. And if you develop local staff, you've got them for the next 20, 30 years, and they start building the next generation. So you start building a whole group of not just really good workers, really good supervisors. You're actually building managers and leaders for tomorrow. And the more managers and leaders of tomorrow you build, the less you have to put into, developing the workers and the other people. So it's not just a cost saving initially, it's a cost saving long term. And plus it changes the whole dynamics of the community. If you employ, 60% more local content and put all that money back into the community, it changes the whole country as far as the medium to long term, not just the short term benefit. And then when the next projects come along, you have that depth of knowledge and understanding, and so it's not just PNG, it's Australia as well, but and some other South Pacific countries, and I've worked in the Middle East with it as well. But a lot of it's focused on Papua New Guinea just because that's my current background. So
it's something that you and Travis has always done, and I've noticed that over the years you employed local and you grew people and you backed people and you made sure they were educated and qualified along the way. And it's something that has really always impressed with me with what you've done over the long time we've known each other. I've seen it in action. You're not just writing the book and espousing, you're actually walking the talk, and it works. Yeah. So all credit to you.
I'm trying to work with local landowner companies and other people doing business with the overseas companies to try and enable them better, change the dynamics so they've got a better ability to do business and control the narrative, as opposed to just being, waiting for a contract to get thrown their way. They're actually on the front foot, approaching and showing their capability and capacity building, and making sure they're one step ahead, ready for whatever comes next. So
that's fantastic, and the local community all benefit. Yeah, it's great. So Warren talks about lots of things in the books, and the ones that stand out to me is the close personal protection. It is the textbook. And the way Warren explains it and why it's necessary. One of my graduates once, he ended up running a large 5-star motel where all the movie stars stay. And of course, that meant the paparazzi were going to be camped right outside. So what's in Warren's book about, the drivers trained correctly and using rolling pickups, or, basically using lookalikes or whatever. All those things come into play if you're doing that to put the paparazzi off, because what they get is $300,000 for one photograph of the celebrity. If they can get the celebrity looking like this, unaware, then that's headlines in the UK or the USA or something like that. So this is something you have a responsibility to know about in your role as a security risk manager just in a hotel. So it's really easily explained. And what I bust my guts teaching people in bush and rural surveillance and stuff like that, Warren's gone and just about made me obsolete just in that book.
Well, I robbed your information from the earlier courses, you see. So
yeah.
I'm just regurgitating it for $1. So it's a security industry way, you know that.
That's right, my word. but I'd rather have it regurgitated by someone who knows what they're talking about and can add so much more. The other thing that Warren explains is the constant need to train and practice. So for emergency services, response, that sort of, in mining, we were constantly going down into the mine at 3 o'clock in the morning to rescue dummies with broken arms or, fractured legs or whatever. We practiced it just in case it ever happened for real. And I was lucky enough never to have a fatal, so that I had a very lucky run and a very lucky period. But one of the examples I want to give you from a practice point of view that works, just while we're on Warren's subject, is this one that happened in Hobart. So what happened in Hobart? In 1974, a boat, the Lake Illawarra, was going underneath the Hobart Tasman Bridge, and it hit it. and it knocked it down. Now, a lot of people died on the boat and went over the bridge, over the edge, and they never found them. They were missing. And that happened in 1974. So they repaired it. And in 1976, 77, it reopened again. But because of the nervousness at the time, for about 5 years after, every time another boat went under that newly built bridge, they stopped the traffic at both ends. So you had to wait for the boat who was a kilometre downstream to go through the span, clear it, and go out the other side. And you might be waiting 15, 20 minutes, depending on the size and speed of the boat. Now, what happened, coincidentally, was they had an emergency practice for ambulance, fire brigade and police in a fake major incident at Hobart Airport. So they had planned and prepared for this. It was going to go at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. They didn't know, the people involved didn't know when it was going to go. It was just the management testing, the penetration testing, if you like, if they could respond on time. So they said go, and at 3 o'clock they all took off from Hobart CBD heading towards Hobart Airport. Now, they got basically to the Hobart Bridge, and what was happening at the very same time was a boat was heading towards the bridge, and the council had stopped the traffic from both ends. So there's a major emergency exercise happening 15 kilometres away, and the emergency services can't get there. They're trapped inside Hobart CBD because the traffic had to stop. So they learnt from that, okay, if that's going to happen, how do we work around that? Do we move a section to the other side of the river? They have to sit down and figure that out. It's better to find out in a practice situation than it is in a real situation where it could result, that delay could result in major loss of life or major further injuries, fire, smoke, that sort of thing. So Warren's example of continuously practicing it and testing it out in the book, I just loved it. It was great. So really pleased to see. If you are looking for copies of Warren's book, in the description where you are watching right now, you go to the link and you can buy the paperback version. And they're around about $32 to $38. But here's a really quick hint that Warren's given us. And if you want to save some money, and you can jump online and you can buy the Kindle version of Warren's books. And there they are there. So again, people, the link's in the description. You look, for under $40, you've got a lifetime of someone's experience that you can rely on to make you look like the best security risk manager or audit compliance person in the rooms. Really great references there. And when did you launch, Warren?
All the books got launched within sort of a couple of weeks of each other, not because I wrote them at the same time, because the publishing process was, I will admit I made a few mistakes. The first covers were pixelated and some other issues, but so by the time I released a book, the other books were right behind. So right. I think it was in June, early June. So they sort of were like a week apart.
All right. So what's worse, writing a major thesis or writing 3 books?
I'd say both of them were fine. It was actually the finer detail, because I'm a more hammer type of person than finesse. So doing the actual covers, and the final formatting and editing was the hardest thing for me. I'm also dyslexic, so I make lots of spelling mistakes. So trying to pick all the spelling mistakes, and I didn't use an editor for everything like I should have. I tried to do everything myself because, me, if I don't know how to do something, I need to learn before I let anyone else touch it. So yeah, so that's the editing, and the final publication was the hardest thing for me. And I redid the Workforce Nationalisation book, I think it's 6 times before it was actually able to be released properly. Just because I was getting the process down and understanding it. So each book after was quicker and easier. So it's, any writing's hard for me, but the more finessed sort of polished version that comes out is the hardest. So in future, I'm going to get an editor to finalize things for me. So it will save me a ton of time.
Yeah, okay. All right, well, I'll certainly be looking forward to the next releases, mate, and we'll certainly have you back on so you can tell us all about when that comes in. Thank you for coming in today, Dr. Warren Doudle. We really benefited from your experience and what you've authored here. And like I say, it's going to be the textbook for our Certificate 4 and Diploma of Security Risk Management moving forward. It's replaced the Australian standard, and I'm really proud of that. So, yeah, once again, thanks. I'm very wary of taking up all your time. Thanks for giving up your time and coming in.
No, I really appreciate you having me on. And while I'm on, I just want to say thanks to Sammy for helping me with the book, and the other, my other peers and colleagues that helped me as well. All their negative feedback, as always, you know what the Army guys are like. It makes it a lot quicker and easier to write something if you get it straight up, your feedback. So thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, and you'll see everybody that Warren thanks is on the front page of the book, where he has that pre-note in the book. He thanks all the people very graciously there. And people, like I said, the links are in the description. Don't miss out on it. It's Mike and Warren for Friday Investigations Uni. Thanks for watching. We'll see you